The text message glared at me from my phone screen. We need to talk. Now. Rhett never used periods in his texts. Something was wrong. I'm Lorelei, and until that moment, I thought I was living the good life, teaching high school English, raising our beautiful 10-year-old daughter Eliana, and married to my college sweetheart. 15 years of building a life together, gone in 15 minutes. I can't do this anymore, Rhett said, pacing our kitchen while I sat frozen at the counter. The routine, the predictability, I need more. More what? My voice cracked. We can travel more, try new things. I'm in love with Nicole. The room spun. Nicole, my sister-in-law, the successful businesswoman who always had perfectly manicured nails and drove a Tesla. The woman who'd sat at our Thanksgiving table last month, complimented my turkey, and apparently coveted my husband. How long? I managed to whisper. 6 months. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We didn't plan it, it just happened. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. Just happened, like tripping and falling into her bed? Don't be crude, Lorelei. We're both adults here. Are we? Because sneaking around with your brother's wife doesn't seem very adult to me. The back door opened, and Eliana bounced in from the bus stop. Mom, Mrs. Thompson says I got the highest score on my science project. I forced a smile. That's wonderful, sweetie. Why don't you go start your homework? Dad and I need to finish talking. After she disappeared upstairs, Rhett's expression changed. I've already spoken to a lawyer. About divorce? My stomach lurched. About custody. The world stopped. Excuse me? Nicole and we think Eliana would benefit from a more stable environment. Nicole's company is doing incredibly well. We can provide. Get out. I stood up so fast my chair clattered to the floor. Get out before I throw something at you. Be reasonable. Reasonable? I was shaking. You want to take my daughter and give her to the woman you cheated with? There's nothing reasonable about that. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I knew. Nicole was waiting somewhere. We'll be in touch through our lawyers, he said, heading for the door. Try to keep this civil for Eliana's sake. The next morning, while Eliana was at school, I received an email from Nicole's lawyers, Blackwood and Associates, one of the most expensive firms in the state. They were requesting an emergency custody hearing, citing my unstable work schedule and limited financial resources as concerns. I called the school, took a personal day, and drove to my friend Lauren's apartment. She'd been my student 5 years ago and was now a legal intern. I needed advice, and I needed someone who wouldn't judge me for crying into their coffee. They can't just take her, Lauren said, reading the email. You're her mother, you have a stable job, a home. Nicole has millions, I said. And apparently she's already gotten statements from character witnesses. Lauren scrolled down. Wait, is this Mrs. Thompson? Eliana's teacher? My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? She's listed as a witness for their side. Says she has concerns about the mother's involvement in the child's education and emotional development. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Mrs. Thompson, who just yesterday had praised Eliana's science project, who'd smiled at me during parent-teacher conferences and said what a joy my daughter was to teach. How much did they pay her? I wondered aloud. Lauren set down her phone. You need a lawyer. I can't afford Blackwood and Associates? No. Lauren's eyes gleamed with determination. But you have something they don't expect. You have me, and you have a whole community of people who know you're a great mother. Plus, she hesitated. What? I've heard rumors about Nicole's company. The kind of rumors that make interns whisper in break rooms. If they want to play dirty. I thought about Eliana's face when she talked about her science project, about the bedtime stories we shared, the Saturday morning pancake traditions, the way she crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. I'm not losing my daughter, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Whatever it takes. Lauren nodded, already typing on her phone. First step, we need to talk to Hank. He's a journalist I know who specializes in corporate investigations. If Nicole wants to make this about resources and stability, let's see how stable her company really is. For the first time since Rhett's text, I felt a spark of hope. They thought I was just a high school teacher, someone they could bulldoze with expensive lawyers and bought witnesses. But they forgot something crucial. I teach teenagers. I know how to spot lies, how to build trust, and how to fight back when backed into a corner. Game on, Nicole. Lauren's friend Hank met us at a coffee shop downtown, his laptop already open and a notepad filled with scribbled notes beside it. He looked exactly like what I'd expect from an investigative journalist. Rumpled shirt, tired eyes, and an expression that said he'd seen enough corruption to last a lifetime. Nicole's company, New Horizon Solutions, he said, turning his laptop toward us. On paper, it's a tech consulting firm specializing in sustainable energy solutions. Revenue grew 400% in the last 2 years. That's impressive, I said, though business talk made my eyes glaze over. Too impressive. Hank's fingers flew across the keyboard. Companies like this don't just explode overnight. I've been tracking them for months, but couldn't get anyone inside to talk. Lauren leaned forward. What are you thinking? Money laundering, at minimum. The numbers don't add up. They claim to have major contracts with European firms, but my phone buzzed. A text from Eliana. Mom, where are you? Mrs. Thompson wants to talk to you after school. My stomach clenched. I have to go. My daughter's teacher, the one who's testifying for Nicole, wants to meet. Perfect timing, Lauren said. Confront her. Find out what Nicole offered her. The elementary school parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. Mrs. Thompson was waiting outside her classroom, her usually warm smile replaced by something more guarded. Lorelei, she said, gesturing me inside. I assume you've seen the custody filing. You mean where you're helping my sister-in-law steal my daughter? I kept my voice level, remembering Lauren's advice to stay calm and gather information. Mrs. Thompson's face flushed. That's not, I'm doing what's best for Eliana. By lying about my involvement in her education, I'm at every parent-teacher conference. I help with homework. Nicole's offering to fund our STEM program. She blurted out. Do you know what that means? New computers, lab equipment, opportunities for kids who'd never get them otherwise. I stared at her, disgusted. So you sold my daughter's future for a computer lab? It's not that simple. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Nicole showed me the plans. The money she's investing could change hundreds of lives. And what about Eliana's life? Have you thought about what being taken from her mother would do to her? Mrs. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. Nicole says you'll have visitation rights, and with their resources... Their resources? I stepped closer. You mean the money from New Horizon Solutions? Did Nicole tell you where that money comes from? Something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe. What do you mean? Ask her about the European contracts. Ask her why no one can find records of these supposedly major clients. I pulled out my phone, showing her Hank's preliminary research. Or maybe ask yourself why a legitimate business needs to buy witnesses. That's not what this is. But she was looking at the numbers, her forehead creasing. Mrs. Thompson, you've taught Eliana for months. You've seen how happy she is, how well she's doing. Are you really willing to testify that she'd be better off with people who are willing to bribe teachers? The classroom door opened before she could respond. Nicole stood there, perfect as always in her designer suit. Lorelei, she said smoothly, I thought I might find you here. Making threats, are we? Just having a conversation about ethics, something you might want to brush up on. Nicole's smile didn't waver. Andrea, thank you for your time. Our lawyers will be in touch about your statement. Mrs. Thompson looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. I should get home. After she left, Nicole's smile disappeared. Whatever you think you know about my company, drop it. You're just embarrassing yourself. Like you embarrassed yourself sleeping with my husband? Rhett came to me, she said. He was suffocating in your little domestic fantasy. I offered him something more exciting. And now you want my daughter too? Eliana deserves the best opportunities. Private schools, summer programs abroad, connections that'll secure her future. What can you offer? Story time and graded papers? I stepped closer, close enough to smell her expensive perfume. You know what I can offer? Truth, love, a mother who won't abandon her for the next exciting opportunity. Careful, Lorelei. Her voice was silk over steel. You're a teacher making what, $50,000 a year? My lawyers bill more than that per month. Don't start a war you can't win. I thought about Hank's research, about Lauren's determination, about the look of doubt on Mrs. Thompson's face. You know what I teach my students, Nicole? That the biggest bullies are usually the most afraid. What are you afraid I'll find if I keep digging? For just a second, her perfect mask slipped. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking on the linoleum floor. I pulled out my phone and called Hank. "How fast can you get those European contract records?" "Give me 48 hours, he said. "And Lorelei, I just got an interesting email from someone inside New Horizon. Seems your sister-in-law's perfect company has some very imperfect books." I smiled, watching Nicole's Tesla pull out of the parking lot. The war was just beginning. "Look at this," Hank said, spreading documents across his desk at the local newspaper office. "Every major contract New Horizon claims to have in Europe traces back to shell companies, all registered within months of each other, all with virtually no online presence." Lauren picked up one of the papers. "These revenue numbers are impossible. No startup consulting firm makes this kind of money this fast." I rubbed my temples, trying to make sense of it all. "But what does this actually prove?" "It proves," Hank said, pulling up a spreadsheet on his computer, "that your sister-in-law is either the most successful consultant in history or she's running an elaborate scheme to hide money. And I just got an interesting email from someone named Marcus, who used to work in their accounting department." My phone buzzed. Another text from Rhett. "Eliana's asking to spend the weekend at our house. Nicole's planning a special dinner." "Not happening," I muttered, typing my response. "Focus," Lauren said, touching my arm. "What did Marcus say?" Hank leaned back in his chair. "He's willing to talk, but he's scared. Says Nicole threatened to destroy his career when he questioned some transactions. He's meeting us tonight at the River Street Diner." The diner was nearly empty when we arrived. Marcus sat in a corner booth, nervously shredding a paper napkin. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with anxious eyes that kept darting to the door. "I shouldn't be here," he said as we sat down. "If Nicole finds out, she won't," Hank assured him. "Everything you tell us is confidential until we're ready to go public." Marcus pulled out a USB drive. "I kept copies of everything, the real books, not the ones they show investors. They're using the consulting contracts as cover for moving money through European banks. It's not legal. None of it is." "Why are you telling us this now?" I asked. He looked down at his coffee. "Because I saw the custody filing. I have a little sister Eliana's age. Using dirty money to take someone's kid? That's crossing a line." Just then, my phone lit up with a call from Mrs. Thompson. I stepped outside to take it. "Lorelei?" Her voice was shaky. "I need to tell you something. Nicole came to see me again today. She offered to double the donation if I'd testify that I've noticed signs of emotional neglect." My free hand clenched into a fist. "And?" I told her no. "I've been thinking about what you said. I pulled up some information about New Horizon and something feels wrong. I can't be part of this." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling tears prick my eyes. "There's more. Nicole got angry when I refused. She implied that if I didn't help her, the donation would not only disappear, but she'd make sure other potential donors heard our school was difficult to work with." "She threatened you?" "Not directly, but yes. I'm going to tell the lawyers I'm withdrawing my testimony. I'm sorry, Lorelei. I should never have agreed in the first place." Back inside, Hank was copying files from Marcus's USB drive while Lauren took notes. "This is bigger than we thought," Hank said. "They're not just laundering money. They're using the clean cash to buy political influence, manipulate contracts, silence people who ask questions. Like threatening teachers who won't lie in custody cases." I told them about Mrs. Thompson's call. Lauren's eyes widened. "That's actual witness tampering. We need to document everything." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "There's something else you should know. Nicole's been moving money into private accounts, large amounts like she's preparing for something." "Or preparing to run," Hank mused. "If she thinks we're getting close." My phone buzzed again. An email from Nicole's lawyers requesting an emergency hearing next week. They were trying to rush the custody decision. "She knows," I said. "She must suspect we're digging. That's why they're pushing to fast-track everything." "Then we need to move faster," Hank said. "I can have the story ready in 3 days. With Marcus's evidence and Mrs. Thompson's testimony about the attempted witness tampering." "No," Lauren interrupted. "We need to be strategic. If we publish too soon, they'll claim it's just a smear campaign to influence the custody case. We need to get this to the FBI first." Marcus paled. "The FBI?" "You'll be protected as a whistleblower," Hank assured him. "I have contacts in the white-collar crime division. They've been looking for something like this." I thought about Nicole's perfect smile, her threats, her certainty that money could buy her anything, even my daughter. Do it, I said. Contact the FBI, but Hank, keep working on the story. The second they move on New Horizon, I want everyone to know exactly who Nicole is. Lauren squeezed my hand. We've got this. She thought you were an easy target, but she didn't count on having a journalist, a lawyer in training, and a whistleblower on your side. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly confident. Nicole might have money and expensive lawyers, but I had something better. The truth. And it was about to blow her perfect world apart. The school hallway felt different at night, empty, echoing. I'd stayed late grading papers, trying to maintain some normalcy in my life, when I heard voices from Mrs. Thompson's classroom. You're making a serious mistake. Nicole's voice, sharp and clear. Think about what you're throwing away. I moved closer to the partially open door. I've thought about it, Mrs. Thompson replied. I've thought about nothing else. What you're asking me to do is wrong. Wrong? I'm offering to transform your school, to give these children opportunities they'd never have otherwise. All I need is your honest testimony about Lorelai's limitations as a parent. Honest? Mrs. Thompson's laugh was bitter. You want me to lie under oath, to help destroy a good mother's life. That's not honest. I pushed the door open. Both women turned, Nicole's face darkening when she saw me. Destroying lives? I said, stepping into the classroom. That seems to be your specialty lately. Nicole smoothed her silk blouse. We were just having a private conversation. About bribing a witness? Or was it about threatening her career when she refused? Mrs. Thompson moved to stand beside me. I've already contacted your lawyers. I'm withdrawing my testimony. Andrea, Nicole's voice turned honey-sweet. Think about your students. The new science lab, the computers, the... Stop. Mrs. Thompson's voice shook but held firm. Just stop. I've seen Lorelai with Eliana every day for months. That little girl is happy, well-adjusted, and loved. No amount of money is worth destroying that. Nicole's perfect mask cracked. You sanctimonious little... Careful, I interrupted. Threatening a witness is a federal offense. Or didn't your expensive lawyers tell you that? You think you're so clever, Nicole snarled. Digging into my company, turning people against me. But you have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I know about the shell companies. The fake European contracts, the money laundering. Her face went white. You're bluffing. Marcus says hello. The name hit her like a physical blow. She grabbed her designer purse, hands shaking. You'll regret this, both of you. I have resources you can't imagine. Like the resources you're hiding in those private accounts. I stepped closer. The ones you've been moving money into, planning a quick getaway when it all falls apart. You know nothing, she turned to Mrs. Thompson. And you, your career in education is over. I'll make sure of it. I recorded everything, Mrs. Thompson said quietly. This conversation, the one last week, all of it. Would you like to add more threats to the record? Nicole stormed out, heels clicking furiously down the empty hallway. Mrs. Thompson sank into her chair, trembling. I'm so sorry, Lorelai. I never should have agreed to help her. Why did you? I pulled up a student's chair, sitting across from her desk. My husband lost his job last year. We're drowning in medical bills from his cancer treatment. When Nicole showed up offering to fund the entire STEM program, plus a personal consultation fee, she wiped her eyes. I was desperate. And now? Now I remember why I became a teacher. It wasn't for money or fancy equipment. It was to help children, to do what's right. She looked at me directly. I'll testify for you instead. Tell the court everything Nicole tried to make me do. My phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. FBI meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring everything. Thank you, I told Mrs. Thompson. Your testimony could make a real difference. There's something else you should know, she said, lowering her voice. Yesterday, I overheard Nicole on the phone in the parking lot. She was arguing with someone about moving assets offshore. She said something about before the feds catch on. I texted this information to Hank immediately. His response came seconds later. Got it. Story's almost ready. Just waiting for FBI green light. Mrs. Thompson touched my arm. Lorelai, for what it's worth, Eliana talks about you constantly. About your bedtime stories, your Saturday traditions, how you always know how to make her feel better when she's sad. Nicole may have money, but she can't buy that kind of love. My phone buzzed again. Rhett this time. Nicole's lawyers say they have evidence of your interference with witnesses. Preparing emergency motion. I showed Mrs. Thompson the text. Are you sure about this? They're going to come after you hard. She straightened in her chair, something steely entering her expression. Let them come. I've spent my career teaching children to stand up to bullies. It's time I took my own lesson to heart. As I left the school, I saw Nicole's Tesla still in the parking lot. She was on the phone, gesturing angrily. Our eyes met through the windshield, and I saw something I never expected to see in my perfect sister-in-law's face. Fear. The next morning, I had everything ready for the FBI meeting. Nicole thought she could buy her way to victory, but she was about to learn an expensive lesson. Some things aren't for sale. The FBI office was nothing like the movies. No dramatic interrogation rooms, just a bland conference room where two agents in suits reviewed our evidence with methodical precision. These transactions, Agent Sarah pointed to Marcus's documents, establish a clear pattern of money laundering. The shell companies, the falsified contracts. It's sophisticated. And the witness tampering? Lauren asked, sliding forward Mrs. Thompson's recorded conversations. Agent Mike nodded. Adds another layer of federal charges. Ms. Rodriguez seems to have a pattern of using financial leverage for coercion. My phone vibrated, Eliana's face lighting up the screen. Mom, Dad, and Nicole are taking me to dinner tonight. Can I go? Before I could respond, another message from Rhett. Don't make this difficult. The lawyers advised regular visits would help their case. Everything okay? Lauren whispered. I shook my head, showing her the messages. Agent Sarah looked up from her papers. They're trying to establish a pattern of shared custody before the hearing. I'd advise against it. But won't refusing make me look uncooperative? I asked. Document everything, Agent Mike said. Every request, every threat, every attempt to manipulate the situation. It builds our case. Just then, Hank burst into the room, laptop in hand. Sorry I'm late, but you need to see this. One of Nicole's former employees just sent me their internal communications. He turned the screen toward the agents. Emails filled with coded language about cleaning transactions and redirecting funds. But what caught my eye was a recent message from Nicole to her financial advisor. Transfer everything. They're getting too close. She's preparing to run, Agent Sarah said, pulling out her phone. We need to move faster than planned. What about my daughter? My voice cracked. If Nicole realizes you're closing in, we'll have surveillance on them, Agent Mike assured me. But we need you to act normal. Don't let them suspect we're involved. I texted Rhett back. Eliana has a big test tomorrow. She needs to study. Maybe this weekend instead? His response was immediate and angry. This is exactly the kind of interference our lawyers warned about. Expect to hear from them. Lauren squeezed my hand. We're close, Lorelei. Just hold on. The next few hours were a blur of legal terms and strategic planning. The FBI would move on New Horizon solutions within days. Hank's story was ready to break the moment they did. Mrs. Thompson had submitted her official statement recanting her previous testimony and detailing Nicole's attempts at bribery and intimidation. As we left the FBI office, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Lorelei? A woman's voice, nervous. I'm Patricia. I was Nicole's executive assistant until last month. I put the call on speaker. Yes? I saw your name in some legal documents Nicole was shredding yesterday. She's destroying evidence, lots of it, and she's booked flights to the Cayman Islands for next week. Hank was already typing notes. Can you prove any of this? I took photos before I left. I knew something wasn't right when she started moving all those files. I have kids too. I couldn't sleep knowing she was trying to take someone's child with money from criminal activities. Back at Hank's office, Patricia's photos appeared in his email. Documents showing systematic fraud, emails about witness tampering, and flight confirmations to a country with no extradition treaty. This is it, Hank said, forwarding everything to the FBI. The final nail in her coffin. My phone buzzed again. Nicole this time. Your daughter deserves better than a mother who'd destroy a successful business out of spite. Back off, or things will get very unpleasant. Lauren read the message over my shoulder. She's scared. That's why she's threatening you directly now. Should I respond? No, Hank said. Let her think her threats are working. The FBI said to act normal, remember? But normal became impossible when I picked up Eliana from school. She was crying. Mom, Nicole said you're trying to ruin everything. She said you're just jealous because Dad loves her more, and that's why you're making up lies about her company. I knelt in front of my daughter, fighting back my own tears. Honey, listen to me. Adults sometimes do bad things and then try to blame others. But the truth always comes out. She showed me pictures of the house they want to buy. It has a pool, and she said I could have my own pony. Eliana. I held her close. All the pools and ponies in the world don't matter if they're bought with lies. You taught me that, remember? When you returned that bracelet your friend stole from the store? She nodded against my shoulder. Because having something that comes from doing bad things just makes you feel bad inside. My phone lit up with a message from Agent Sarah. Operation approved. We move tomorrow morning. I hugged my daughter tighter. Nicole thought she could buy happiness, buy love, buy her way out of consequences. But tomorrow she'd learn that some things come with a price tag even she couldn't afford. The morning news exploded with headlines. FBI raids New Horizon Solutions. Tech company CEO accused of money laundering. Multi-million-dollar fraud scheme exposed. I watched the coverage with Lauren and Hank at his office, seeing Nicole being escorted from her building in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally cracking. Where's Rhett? Lauren asked, scanning the footage. As if on cue, my phone rang. Rhett's number. What did you do? He sounded panicked. The FBI just seized everything. They're saying Nicole was running a criminal enterprise. I finished. Laundering money, bribing witnesses. Yeah, they are. This is insane. You've ruined everything. No, Rhett, you and Nicole did that when you decided to try taking my daughter using dirty money. A commotion erupted outside Hank's office. Mrs. Thompson burst in, breathless. Nicole's lawyers are at the school. They're trying to take Eliana. My heart stopped. What? They're saying they have emergency custody papers. The principal is stalling them, but I was already running, Lauren right behind me. We reached the school in minutes, finding 2 suits from Blackwood and Associates in the main office. You have no right to remove that child, the principal was saying. We have a signed order from who? I demanded, bursting in. The judge hasn't ruled yet. The younger lawyer stepped forward. Given the circumstances of Ms. Rodriguez's arrest, we're acting to secure the child's safety. Safety? Lauren pulled out her phone. I'm on with Agent Sarah from the FBI. She says any attempt to remove Eliana now would constitute kidnapping. The lawyers exchanged glances. The older one spoke into his phone. Stand down. We're not proceeding. After they left, I hugged the principal. Thank you for protecting her. Of course. She smiled. Though you should thank Tommy in the front office. He's the one who accidentally locked the hallway doors when they tried to reach the classrooms. My phone buzzed with a text from Hank. Stories live. Check the website. The article was devastating. Bank records, witness statements, internal emails, all laying out Nicole's years of financial crimes. But the part that hit hardest was the section about the custody battle, detailing how she'd tried to use her fraudulent wealth to buy witnesses and influence the court. Mom? Eliana appeared in the office doorway. Is it true? About Nicole? I knelt beside her. Yes, honey. Sometimes people we trust do bad things. Dad's outside. He's crying. Lauren touched my shoulder. Want me to stay with you? I shook my head. I need to handle this. Rhett was slumped on a bench by the playground, head in his hands. He looked up as I approached. I didn't know, he whispered, about the money, the fraud. I swear, Lorelei. But you knew about trying to buy off Eliana's teacher, about threatening people who stood in your way. Nicole said it was normal in business, that sometimes you have to play hardball. With my daughter, my voice rose. You thought playing hardball with your child's mother was okay? His phone rang. Nicole's lawyer again. He ignored it. They're freezing all her assets, he said. The house, the cars, everything we were going to give Eliana was bought with stolen money. Is that what you wanted for her? To build her life on lies? More texts flooded my phone. Former students offering support. Parents from Eliana's class sharing messages about Nicole's attempts to influence other teachers. The community rallying around us. What happens now? Rhett asked. Now, you get a good lawyer, one who specializes in criminal defense. Because when they finish tracking Nicole's money, they'll have questions for you too. And Eliana? I looked at our daughter through the school window, sitting with her friends, safe and unaware of the storm swirling around her. She stays with me, where she's always belonged. Lauren approached, holding up her phone. The custody hearing's been postponed. Judge wants to review the new evidence first. Rhett stood unsteady. I should go. My lawyer's calling. As he walked away, Lauren read from her phone. FBI confirms Nicole was planning to flee the country. Had tickets booked for next week. With my daughter, I said quietly. But she didn't get the chance. Because you fought back. Because you had people who believed in you. My phone chimed with a message from Mrs. Thompson. Eliana just gave a beautiful presentation about heroes in her life. She talked about her mom who always stands up for what's right. I wiped my eyes, watching Rhett's car disappear around the corner. He'd chosen wealth and excitement over family and truth. Now he was learning the same lesson as Nicole. Some choices have consequences money can't fix. The school bell rang, and Eliana waved at me through the window. In that moment, I knew we'd be okay. Because unlike Nicole's empire of lies, our foundation was built on something real, something true, something no amount of money could ever buy. The courthouse hallway buzzed with tension. Nicole sat with her new legal team, not the sleek Blackwood and Associates suits anymore, but public defenders. Her designer clothes were replaced by a modest blue dress, her perfect manicure chipped and fading. Lauren squeezed my hand. Ready? Before I could answer, Mrs. Thompson hurried over. They just called Nicole in for final negotiations. Her lawyers are pushing for a deal. What kind of deal? I asked. Reduced charges in exchange for cooperation. But the custody case, she smiled. That's not negotiable. Rhett appeared at the end of the hall, looking lost in his off-the-rack suit. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. The courtroom doors opened, and Agent Sarah emerged. Lorelei, the judge wants to speak with you privately. Judge Martinez was a stern-faced woman with kind eyes. Please sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Your Honor, She held up her hand. Before we proceed, I want you to understand something. I've been a family court judge for 20 years. I've seen every trick, every scheme, every attempt to buy influence. But what Ms. Rodriguez attempted here, she shook her head. It's unprecedented. I just want my daughter safe. I know, I've reviewed everything. The FBI evidence, Mrs. Thompson's testimony, the community statements. But what struck me most was this. She held up a piece of paper. A letter from Eliana's class project last week, about heroes. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen it. She wrote about how her mom teaches kids to love reading, how you showed her that standing up to bullies isn't just about being strong, but about being right. The judge smiled. That's worth more than all of Ms. Rodriguez's fraudulent millions. A knock at the door interrupted us. The bailiff entered with urgent news. Nicole was accepting a plea deal. Back in the main courtroom, everything moved quickly. Nicole stood before the judge, her voice barely audible as she admitted to money laundering, witness tampering, and attempted custodial interference. And do you understand, Judge Martinez asked, that as part of this agreement, you are withdrawing all claims to custody or visitation rights regarding Eliana Wilkins Davis? Nicole nodded, not meeting anyone's eyes. Rhett stepped forward next. Your Honor, I'd like to speak. The judge gestured for him to continue. I was wrong, he said, his voice shaking. I got caught up in Nicole's world. The money, the excitement, the promises. I forgot what really mattered. He turned to me. Lorelei has always been the better parent. I'd like to voluntarily reduce my custody rights to supervised visitation if she'll allow it. The courtroom fell silent. Lauren gripped my arm. Lorelei, the judge prompted, would you be amenable to supervised visitation? I thought about Eliana, about her capacity for forgiveness, about the importance of having both parents in her life, even if one had made terrible mistakes. Yes, I said, but with conditions. Regular counseling, no contact with Nicole, and all visits supervised by the court-appointed monitor. Judge Martinez nodded approvingly. So ordered. As we filed out of the courtroom, Nicole's new lawyer approached. My client would like a moment. Nicole stood nearby, shadows under her eyes, her perfect facade completely crumbled. What could you possibly have to say? I asked. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought I could buy anything I wanted. Happiness, love, family. I was wrong. Yes, you were. The FBI found most of the money. she continued. But there's an account, one they don't know about yet. I'd like it to go to Eliana's college fund. It's clean money from before, everything. I stared at her. Why? Because I've lost everything else. Let me do one right thing. Before I could respond, Hank appeared with breaking news on his phone. The story had gone national. New Horizons investors were filing lawsuits. The FBI had uncovered connections to other fraudulent schemes. You should go, I told Nicole. Your lawyers will want to handle the press. She nodded, then paused. Tell Eliana. Tell her I'm sorry I tried to buy her love instead of earning it. Later that evening, I sat with Eliana in our favorite ice cream shop, watching her demolish a sundae while she chatted about her school day, seemingly unfazed by the morning's drama. Mom? She asked suddenly, are you still a hero if you're scared sometimes? I thought about the past few weeks, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty. Being scared doesn't make you less of a hero, sweetie. Sometimes being scared and doing the right thing anyway is what makes you brave. Like when you fought Nicole even though she had all that money? Like that. But you know what made me brave enough to do it? What? Having people who believed in me. Mrs. Thompson, Lauren, Hank, and especially you. She grinned, ice cream on her nose. We're like a team of superheroes. Yeah, I laughed, handing her a napkin. I guess we are. My phone buzzed with a message from Lauren. Judge signed the final custody order. It's really over. I watched my daughter, happy and safe, and felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. Nicole had tried to buy what could only be earned. Love, trust, family. In the end, all her money couldn't match the simple power of doing what was right. The autumn breeze scattered leaves across the school parking lot as I waited to pick up Eliana. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former tech CEO Nicole Rodriguez sentenced to 15 years. The article mentioned Rhett had received probation for his lesser role in the scheme. Mom, Eliana ran toward me, waving a paper. I got the lead in the school play. That's amazing. What's the role? I'm Robin Hood. She struck a dramatic pose. Mrs. Thompson says I'm perfect for it because it's about standing up to rich bullies who abuse their power. I caught Mrs. Thompson's eye as she supervised the carpool line. She smiled and walked over. The irony wasn't lost on me, she said, but Eliana really was the best choice. She has a natural sense of justice. My phone rang. Lauren calling with news. The FBI finished tracing that last account Nicole mentioned. It's legitimate pre-fraud money. The courts are releasing it for Eliana's college fund. I still don't know how to feel about that, I admitted. Think of it as restitution, not a gift, Lauren said. Oh, and Hank's article just won a national award. He's donating part of the prize money to the school's STEM program. No strings attached. After hanging up, I noticed Eliana watching me intently. What's on your mind, sweetie? Dad called yesterday. He wants to come to my play. The supervised visits had been going well, but this would be different. Public. Real. How do you feel about that? She kicked at a pile of leaves. I want him to come, but what if he brings Nicole? Nicole's not allowed to contact us, remember? And Dad's learning to make better choices. Like when I learned not to hang out with Megan after she was mean to Sarah. Exactly like that. Mrs. Thompson cleared her throat. Speaking of the play, we could use some parent volunteers for costumes, especially someone good at telling stories. I laughed. Are you saying you want the English teacher to help with Robin Hood? Well, you do have experience dealing with people who steal from others and try to buy power. Eliana tugged my sleeve. Can we get ice cream before going home? I want to tell you my ideas for the role. Actually, Mrs. Thompson said, why don't you both come to my house? The cast list just went up and some of the parents are bringing pizza to celebrate. Lauren and Hank said they'd stop by too. As we drove to Mrs. Thompson's, Eliana chatted about costume ideas, while I thought about how much had changed. The people I'd once seen as enemies or betrayers, Mrs. Thompson, even Rhett, had shown that redemption was possible. The community that Nicole thought she could buy had proven its true value couldn't be measured in dollars. Mrs. Thompson's living room was full of excited kids and parents when we arrived. Lauren and Hank were already there, arguing playfully about whether the school play needed an investigative journalist character. Hey, Lauren said, pulling me aside, there's something you should know. Remember Marcus, the whistleblower? He's starting a foundation to help corporate whistleblowers protect themselves legally. He wants you to be on the board. Me? I'm just a teacher. A teacher who brought down a multi-million-dollar fraud and stopped a corrupt CEO from buying her way to custody of your child. You showed people they can fight back. Eliana appeared with a plate of pizza. Mom, Joey's dad says he can make real bows and arrows for the play. Not sharp ones, just props, but still. Speaking of props, Hank joined us. Wait until you see what the drama department can do with their new budget. Anonymous donor, very anonymous. He winked. My phone buzzed. A text from Rhett. Eliana told me about the play. I'd like to attend if you're comfortable with it. Following all supervision requirements, of course. I showed Lauren the message. Your call, she said. But he's been sticking to the agreement. Maybe this is another step forward. I texted back, yes, you can come. Eliana would like that. Mom, Eliana called from across the room. We're planning the forest scene. We need someone who knows how to tell a good story about justice winning. Looking around the room, at my daughter, at the friends who'd become family, at the community that had stood together against corruption, I realized we'd already written that story. Nicole had tried to buy her happy ending, but real happiness, like real justice, had to be earned. Coming, Robin Hood, I called back, joining the circle of parents and children all eager to help tell a tale of right prevailing over might. As Eliana launched into her ideas for the scene, her eyes shining with excitement, I knew that some things were beyond price. Love, truth, justice, community. These were the real treasures. And unlike Nicole's hollow empire, they were built to last.